So, in my almost 20 years as a financial advisor, I've watched a lot of clients retire, a lot of people retire, and I've watched the meaning of retirement shift over those years. And I think we're in the midst of seeing the meaning of retirement shift again. Now, I first met Jannette maybe 6 months ago through a mutual friend, and I was immediately struck by her vision for what she calls maturepreneurship. Jannette has been a corporate trainer. She's taught marketing and entrepreneurship for universities and colleges. She did her time in the corporate tranches and roles, all the way from a print shop operator to VP of professional services for a Fortune 500 company. Now, Jannette is leading what I might only describe as a movement towards next chapter entrepreneurship, or maturepreneurship, as she's coined it. And I am just delighted to have a conversation with my friend about her passion and her vision for Jannette, what's coming. So thanks for having coffee with me this morning and chatting a little bit.
I am so grateful to be here. I love spending any time with you because you're always so upbeat, positive, and you challenge me. I love it.
Oh, well, thanks a lot. I get a great energy from you, so maybe it's more me just reflecting you here. But Jannette, tell me a little bit about kind of your background. Maybe, I mean, I just hit the highlights here, but what led up to you forming this vision and this effort to promote what you've called maturepreneurship, so entrepreneurship for kind of your next chapter?
Well, I'll start kind of way back. I think I came out of the womb entrepreneurial. I'm pretty sure I came out with a briefcase in hand, which
it's like did you ever see the movie Boss Baby?
No, I didn't.
Okay, yeah, like a Boss Baby. That's what happened. Okay,
yeah.
Go ahead.
And I grew up with lots of drama and trauma and addictions and so forth, and so I became pretty resilient pretty quickly, and learned that I kind of needed to take care of myself. One of the things that started my real love of entrepreneurship is I really wanted the book Heidi. And so I begged my mom for it, as only a very persistent Aries child can. Can we go get it now? How about now? How about now? Can we go get the book? I kind of, books became my refuge, and I learned to read early. And for some reason, I really wanted that book. So I persisted. And finally, one day she turned around and yelled and said, "No, we can't afford it." And I was shocked, Franklin, not because of what she said, because I heard that a lot growing up, but because of the look on her face. She looked, it was shame and sadness and despair and frustration and anger. And I remember deciding right then, even though I was only 5, that I never wanted to see that look on another person's face. And that became the impetus for my purpose in life, was to support people in creating a yes life instead of a no life. And everything I've done has been around that in some regard. And my entrepreneurialism was born then because, as kids, we don't overcomplicate things. So no money, get money. Right. So I had seen someone have a garage sale in our housing tenement. So I thought, oh, okay, I'll have my first business. And so one day when mom was off at work and someone was probably supposed to be watching me, I hauled everything out of the house that I could and I priced it and I had a garage sale. And I was so proud when she came home. I ran up, and I can remember to this day, I don't remember what I did yesterday, but I made $13.72, which in 1965 is a lot of money. And for a 5-year-old, it's a lot of money. So I was so proud. Problem solution, right? Not quite how she saw it. She was really mad because I had sold a bunch of household knickknacks and her favorite brand new dress. Anyways, the short version of the story is she spanked me, took my money. I had to go back and try and buy back everything. I got back almost all of our stuff except my toys. The kids wouldn't sell me that. So I learned a couple of very important entrepreneurial lessons. One, don't go into business with family.
That's a good lesson.
I'm semi-kidding, but not really. But 2, that you can use entrepreneurship to create what you want, to solve problems, to be able to be, do, and have what you want in the world. And so I became passionate about entrepreneurship from that point forward, because had I not had an intervention, I would have solved the problem. Now, to be fair, I did eventually get the book. And I would still say, even though many people don't consider that a very, fruitful venture, I actually think it was very, very instructional, because you can take your destiny into your own hands through entrepreneurship. So
And
that was the
that's
very
something,
beginning.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that is something that you learned early that I learned much later, right? So I grew up similarly, what I would consider lower middle class. I remember, we weren't impoverished, but I remember one time when I was 10, I got $100 from my grandfather for my birthday. And at $100, when you were, I guess, in the 90s, you could open a bank, like a checking account, and you got free checks. And so I was so excited. I wanted to go open a checking account. So I went down and opened a checking account with the bank, and I got my checks, and I thought like I felt like I was an adult. And I remember like a month later, my mom coming to me and asking, "Hey, can I borrow that $100?" And I thought, I was like, "Yeah, I'll write you a check. That's great." But looking back on it as an adult, it must have been a tough month in the household to borrow $100 from your 10-year-old. But see, I didn't learn what you learned. I didn't learn that the world was malleable until much later. But I think that lesson is just so valuable, to be able to look at the world and see it as it is, but more importantly, to see it as it could be. Um,
Yes.
and that is really the core of entrepreneurship, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that is part of what my whole history has been, is working with entrepreneurs to take what they know, what their passion is, their purpose is, and figure out how to profit themselves and other people from
Mm.
that or with that. And if I fast forward that story, so I've been doing that for the better part of 40 years, except for when I forget and go back into corporate. And then about 2.5 years later, I go, oh, I remember why I hate this. And I go back and start my business again. Um, I was permanently cured in 2001, though.
Right.
Um, so if I kind of fast forward to recently in 2020, I had an experience where I was on a work cruise. And yes, I know it really was a work cruise, um, the marketer's cruise. And I experienced ageism firsthand. I was invisible. Like I was in a networking situation. Someone asked me, "What do you do?" I'm mid-sentence answering him, and he turns and starts talking to someone else. My first reaction was, "Well, what a dick." And then I turned around and walked away, went to another group, happened again. It's like, oh,
Mm.
okay, wait a minute. We can't all be dicks. What, maybe I'm not showing up. So
Mm.
I checked in. No, I mean, I have blue hair and polka dot glasses, and I tend to be pretty visible energetically, etc. That wasn't it. So it's like, what's going on? I got curious and started to observe every older person, especially the older women, and were completely not only ignored, but actually invisible.
Mm.
It's not seen. It was a fascinating phenomenon
Mm.
that I hadn't experienced. I knew about ageism notionally, but I hadn't had it impinge on me.
Mm.
So I decided that was nonsense and needed to go, and started to really get curious about what was going on in the dynamics. And what I've discovered is, first of all, a renewed passion for entrepreneurship for myself, and a whole world of opportunity that people are not seeing, not aware of. Opportunity and crisis. And those two, great opportunity and great crisis, often go hand in hand, right? As just there were more millionaires made in the Great Depression. This is a similar situation where there
Mm.
is a huge two trends, I call them two trends and two epidemics, that are going on, that are creating, as you said, a shift in not only retirement, but the future of business, our society. Everything will be
Mm.
changed by what's going on right now.
That's powerful, and I've heard you speak of this before, like these trends that are coalescing into a bit of a perfect storm. Maybe walk me through what those look like too, because I find that just really fascinating, right? How
Yeah.
there's these demographic shifts and all of that. So yeah, tell us
Well,
about
and
that.
what flummoxes me, frankly, is that it's really not on anybody's radar, and partially because of the demographic that it's affecting. And when
Mm-hmm.
you're dealing with an invisible demographic, then of course the trends impacting them are often not seen or overlooked. So I call it two trends, two epidemics. The first epidemic is what I call a poverty epidemic. And the reality of the situation is that 65% of Canadians, where I am, between 50 and 90% of Americans in the US, depending on the geography and the demographic band, cannot afford to retire. Those numbers are very similar around the world. That means that they're anywhere from food and housing insecurity to the other end of the spectrum, where they simply can't afford to retire in the style that they would like to. They can't take the vacations. They may not be able to maintain their household. They have to downsize, things like that, and everywhere in between. But they have to create income. They cannot live on their current retirement income, whatever that may be. And I don't know in all parts of the US, but in Canada, for most people, if you are simply on government pension, you are below the poverty line if you don't have any other source of income.
I think it's
And
the same here.
yeah, and so the reality is that that's a huge percentage of the population that has to work. Now, I don't know if any of you have tried to get jobs lately, but in for sure North America, it is extremely difficult to get work at a significant level in corporate. You know, if you are an expert, etc. You can get Walmart greeter jobs, but there's not that many Walmarts. So you know, finding meaningful work can be very challenging as you get older. Almost impossible. I've got a friend who's literally gone on 19 interviews now, sent out over 400 resumes, highly qualified, perfect fit for corporate. And as soon as they see how old she is, she's 60, she doesn't get hired. Wow. It's quite fascinating. And not very happy for her, let me tell you. So really challenging. I've heard from multiple people in Mexico that good luck getting a job after 45. So it's even harder in some places. So that's one epidemic that is really impacting and impinging on us. Most people aren't aware, and there is a tremendous result of that. As a result, the largest cohort of entrepreneurs ever to come into the business world in history is happening right now, because so many of those boomers and Gen Xers have to start businesses in order to create income. So in addition to the surge in entrepreneurship in general out of COVID, because people didn't want to go back to work, because they created alternative sources of income, on top of that, you put a huge cohort of boomers and Gen Xers, the largest cohort or the largest demographic up till recently, coming into business all at the same time. That's a trend that is happening right now and will be happening for the next decade, really. But the peak of it is happening now and in the next 3 to 5 years. And there's a tremendous opportunity there, because all of these people are people who need services and products and support and education. And yet no one's targeting them. We're not on anyone's radar. So that's a trend that's being ignored and overlooked that has tremendous opportunity. Now, conversely to the poverty epidemic, the most wealth is in one demographic's hands, and that's never happened before in history. 79.5% of wealth in North America is in the hand of baby boomers right now. So they have a huge amount of the wealth. It's transferring to Gen Xers and millennials right now, but they have a lot of money. So that other 35% has a lot of money. And again, when you look at commercials on TV, what are they for? They're for Depends, adult diapers, and Viagra, and life insurance, and seniors' homes, and maybe those stair lift thingies or special tubs. And that's just such a small percentage of the market that those advertisers, those suppliers are targeting. The rest of the market, the huge majority, need education, business services, you know, coaching, agencies, startup information, funding, and no one's targeting them. So it's an interesting dichotomy. Huge amount of need in terms of the poverty and the requirement to work, huge amount of disposable income. And even those who are retiring, can't retire, they still have some money and can invest in their training and so forth, but they just can't afford to live ongoingly without some source of income. And the fourth aspect to this that I call the second epidemic is the loneliness epidemic. People, I think, are kind of underestimating the mental health impact of it. It's really starting to be talked about a lot more. 1 in 4 Canadians, and I think it's probably similar in the US, claim to be very lonely. And I think the proportion is higher in older people and in entrepreneurs or solopreneurs, people who work alone. We tend to get quite siloed, we get isolated. Certainly, COVID had an impact on this and how we socialize. And the impact of that is that it impacts mental health in many ways. It can add to a feeling of less meaning in life. And one of the realities is when you have purpose and meaning, you live 7 years longer, 7 qualitative years. So you're happier and healthier. When you are lonely and struggling, it takes 8 years off your life. There's, I think I forget which agency said, it might have been WHO, World Health Organization, that it's the equivalent, loneliness is the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day in terms of its impact on your health. Yeah. So when those 4 things converge, when they come together, it's what I'm calling that perfect storm of opportunity. Huge amount of need and motivation, and like real motivation, lots of money, lots of entrepreneurs coming into the marketplace, so creating a huge demand, very little to any supply in terms of events or groups or organizations, and loneliness that requires that needs community, that needs events, that needs things targeted at this demographic that just currently don't exist. So lots and lots of opportunity and lots of ways to have positive impact in supporting a demographic that has an incredible amount of value. I call them the wisdom workforce. And just because you're old doesn't mean you're wise, but there is a lot of expertise, a lot of experience, and a lot of wisdom that we as a world can't afford to lose, and a particular kind of innovation that they bring that is also valuable and we can't afford to lose. So all of those things combined mean this is a really important time, and this is a really important group to support. And that's why I'm super passionate about making sure that this does get on everyone's radar.
What's amazing to me is like just hearing you speak on this again, because we've talked about this in the past, but this is what I love talking to you about this, because it really just connects the dots in my head too. Because there's a lot of these kind of points that I've been kind of ruminating on for a while. Not the least of which is this thing that I talk about all the time, which is I've seen such a difference between people who retire from something versus people who retire to something. And the people who just retire from something and kind of don't have anything to get them up on Monday morning, they just really don't do as well as the people who get up every day and are excited about tackling the next thing. They don't live as long. Their life just doesn't seem as meaningful and as high a quality. And I'm an advocate that everyone should live the life they want, but as an outside observer, I know which avenue I'd rather pursue for my own life, right? And it's similar to what you're talking about with the loneliness epidemic, right? Is the finding connection, finding the meaning, and in the cases where it's difficult to find that in family for whatever reason, because of distance or because of family dynamic problems, finding it in building something that you think is meaningful for yourself and for others can really fill a big gap, I think, in a lot of people's lives. And that coupled with all of the other things you were talking about, right? Just the demographic trends and wealth and age and honestly, the shocking realization of ageism in the corporate world and how rampant it is. That's something that's just really surprising. But something that you said that really kind of struck me was, and I think this is very true, is the kind of mind trust and the experience trust that has been built up in the 55 plus generation, and how important that is really socially, right? Is that they're taking all of this lifetime of expertise and knowledge and wisdom, having seen a lot of things happen over the last 50 years or so. I mean, it's been a tumultuous 50 years.
Yeah.
Watching that and having not only that wisdom, but also just the expertise for how to judge a situation and how to build something and how to connect with other people and a lot of these pieces that I think society really needs in our
Yeah, absolutely.
in
In
active
so
use.
many ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was talking to a lady yesterday on my podcast who is a retirement expert. And one of the things she mentioned to your point about retirement is that statistically, 1 in 3 people who retire struggle tremendously. And part of that is because they don't have that meaning that they're retiring towards. And retirement, the word itself has been mitigated, right? Because it used to be we retired at 65, and typically, well, originally when Social Security was first created, then we died at 68.
Hmm.
But typically now,
Yep.
it used to be 65 and then you died by 75, and so you had 10 years, and that was all you had to fund,
Right.
and that was your 10 years to go do what you wanted.
Right.
That's so not the case now. People are living into their 80s, 90s, hundreds. There's more 100-year-olds on the planet right now than have existed in all of human history. And people being born right now are supposed to be living to 130, which makes 65 mid-age.
That's
So,
amazing. Yeah.
and the other thing that's really shifting things is by 2050, 1 in 4 people will be over 65.
Wow. That's
25% of us.
incredible.
So that's a huge amount of either drain on the social system or contribution to society,
Mm.
depending on what way we go and what we support. And so now, people who are living into their 80s, 90s, hundreds, etc., they have a long time and they don't want to spend all that time just knitting or golfing, right? Like there's more to keep them vital and active. And I think we need to really rethink that word retirement. Um, they're writing the next chapter in their life, and
Mm.
that is a good 20-30 year chapter. That's like a third of your life for some people. So that's an important part to address really consciously. And to your point about the contribution, that is something that I think societally we really have to take into account. Like just in terms of innovation, what younger people bring is what I call a blank slate when it comes to innovation. They don't have as many preconceived notions and so forth. And so they can come with that blank slate, which is wonderful for ideating and creating new ideas. What boomers and older people bring to the table is contextual frame of reference, so they can put things in context. And yes, they're going based on experience from yesterday and before now, but the two together is far more powerful than either of them are apart. And if we don't bring those generational aptitudes together, we lose a tremendous amount of innovation, which we're really going to need to address a lot of
Mm.
the social problems that are coming about right now.
Yeah.
So experience and expertise is valuable in the contextual framing that it offers. So there's a lot of know-how. And ironically, one of the things that older people bring to the world is they're happier.
Mm.
There's a psychological you. We're happiest when we're very young and when we're older. And so it's been shown that when people bring older people into corporations, the culture improves immediately
Mm.
because they're happier and they tend to bring that to the culture.
Yeah.
When we're in our 30s to 50s is when we are the most stressed out and unhappy, which is what our most managers and most people in corporate are in that bracket. And so that's why corporations tend to be quite toxic, because everybody in them is stressed. Bring in some old people, you'll have a better time at work.
Yeah. That's
So
interesting.
there's also that component.
Yeah. I didn't know that stat, but it doesn't surprise me, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um, so okay, so tell us a little bit about what it is you're building and how you see this um this market, but really just this group of really disparate people coalescing around your idea, and that's honestly what I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, thank you. Well, in this market, there's what I call the getting going. So the people who are making a transition in some way. So they're coming in from perhaps corporate or a lifetime of employment into entrepreneurship. Perhaps they've been stay-at-home mom, they're moving into entrepreneurship. So they're the getting going part of the demographic. And then there's the keeping going, those who've been in business for a while and are still going strong. On that note, I just had a meeting with a lady that I got to tell you about. She's so inspiring. Her name's Marjorie Zingle. She's here in Calgary, 89, and is now taking on 20,000 extra square feet of office space for her second tech business launch. She bought her first tech business when she was 69. Without not having any background in tech. She's the only woman in the world to own a big data center. And she's now expanding it and starting her second tech business at 89. And so I hear stories like that more and more frequently. And I don't think people realize that there's a lot of very dynamic older people doing things, like I said, into their 80s and 90s. But there is no events, there's no committees or communities. Even if you look at AARP, inherent in the name is a problem. Right? Or CARP, the Canadian Association of Retired Persons, or the American Association, they're only dealing with about 20% of the population. They're only advocating and lobbying and doing, working on changing laws and systemic ageism for retired people. Well, that's a small percentage of the population. So I'm really hoping that they expand their context. In terms of what I'm building, I think we need a number of things. One is awareness. So I have a podcast that for those who are too inspired to retire, and that's both the listeners and the people who are on it, to think of things differently. We need to shift our internal ageism, and that's rampant. I didn't realize how ageist I was internally until I read Ashton Applewhite's book, This Chair Rocks, Manifesto Against Ageism. It's such a good book, and I really became aware of the automatic beliefs that get instilled in us from our society about old is bad and all of the biases we have. So, and it's rampant in our language. There's just so many things that you don't really notice until they're brought to your attention. So the podcast to start shifting the narrative, because I think we really do need to shift the narrative consciously. A network, a community, a membership community that is a low-cost group where we can meet virtually and support people in getting going and keeping going. Because the keeping goings need to renew that inspiration, renew their commitment. They've been doing it a while. They're often quite tired. They might need to turn up the volume again on their purpose. So it's a community that supports them practically and tactically in not being alone in this anymore, in getting that they do have support and resources, and really practically lifting one another up. So masterminding, networking, coaching, etc. The next thing that I'm creating is a platform, an educational platform, so an academy that has curated coaches, programs, agency support for people to be able to get the targeted information and education they need. Because at this point, ain't nobody got time to go get an entrepreneurship degree that's not going to really help them grow a business. You know, it's theory, but it's not really actually on the boots helpful or on the ground helpful. So that's a curated platform that will support them in terms of education. And I'm doing a convention here in Calgary, Alberta, next May called the Maturepreneur Convention. And it is, well, we're calling it an unconventional convention. And it is for those who are refiring, not retiring. You know, there's quite a bit of events and discussion and groups and organizations around aging and ageism, and a lot about retirement, but nothing for that space in between of those who are refiring. So that's what this event is for. It'll be wisdom workforce track and speakers, a trade show, and a legacy and lifestyle track and speakers. Next, we're creating a magazine because there isn't any media targeted at this demographic. In Canada, we have Zoomer Media, which is zippy boomers. It's a magazine, but it's a lifestyle magazine. Even they don't have this working demographic on their radar. And if you look at Fortune and Inc. and Entrepreneur Magazine, pretty much the only time they mention us is with regards to drain on the social system and the costs of that, or the retirement industry and how to target that.
You know,
Very
I'll amen that here. Not to cut off your flow,
yeah.
so put a pin. But I have always hated the like 40 under 40 and the 30 under 30 and all of those things. Like, show me the guy who lost everything at 45 and had to rebuild his life, and then at 70 is finally killing it again and excited.
Mhm.
That's the person that I am excited about, not the young hot shot who went to Harvard and, kind of took every little baby step from there. Not that those are baby steps, and I'm not
Yeah.
insulting Harvard, but I really have so much more appreciation for people who have lived a life,
Yeah.
and have come out the other side of it with all of the blood and scars and difficulty that entails.
Yeah.
Those are the people that I'm excited to learn from, quite frankly.
Yeah. And there is a bit of a movement towards, like, here in Alberta, we have a top 7 over 70, and I've seen an 8 over 80 kind of thing. It is starting to be there, but a lot of times that's focused on philanthropic work, which is still valuable, and so on, some businesses, but mostly it's people who are doing things outside of that realm. So
Mm,
it is starting in terms of awareness, but I so agree with you. There is a lot to be said for success that's early and innovation and great ideas, but show me someone who's stuck it out
yeah.
through the ups and downs and ups and downs and ups and downs and decades of ups and downs,
Yeah.
sustainability, commitment.
Well,
That's inspiring.
because that's life. I mean, that's the life that almost all of us experience. Is, we're trucking along, and then you get blindsided by something, and you got to deal with that, and that derails you over here, and then you got to put it all back together, and you got to keep going, right? And that is that's part of what makes life hard and beautiful, and those are the things that give you wisdom. And
Yeah.
again, those are the people that I'm interested in learning from, because those are the folks who've had to live the kind of life I had to live, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that I think
Yeah,
make it
exactly. And they
helpful. Yeah,
have,
go ahead.
you know, some depth and appreciation for people and for situations, that's really important. I
Yes.
think gratitude is a beautiful commodity, and we need a lot more of that. So yeah, and not that every old person is grateful, but
No,
um,
but amen.
and
Yeah.
then just going back, the last part of another part of the world that we're creating is an association, a nonprofit association down the road, to do that advocacy and lobbying. If we cannot get AARP to expand their
Mm,
focus, then we'll create an advocacy branch. But really, what I'm working on is getting them seen, heard, advocated for, and resources, because good luck trying to get a bank loan or VC funding or even business insurance if you're over 60.
mm,
Next to impossible.
mm,
And so that kind of thing, those kind of impediments, the systemic impediments, but also the mental challenges that we face, um, it's different than younger entrepreneurs. We
mm,
have all of those challenges with another layer of some additional ones. So I
mm,
think it really helps to come together. And I think it's time for our society. We're really shifting our perspective on, um, perhaps reluctantly, but we're shifting our perspective on what it means to get older.
mm.
Uh, and we need to get in charge of that
Mhm.
story,
Yeah.
rather than defaulting to what we have heard or been told. There's a chance to contribute and to make a difference until the day you die, and perhaps even after that. But I think to dismiss the incredible value that exists in this huge market, we do that
Amen.
at our peril.
Amen. Well, Jannette, look, I've really enjoyed our conversation here. I always love hearing about this. It really does get me excited. And
Mhm.
so tell us real quick where people can connect with you. So you have the podcast, you have a
Yeah.
website.
So the Maturepreneur podcast is on all the platforms. You can go to the YouTube channel, Maturepreneur World, or network, I forget, dang. And just go to Maturepreneur, which is mature, and then part of the word entrepreneur, .world. That's where you can find information about the network and the event that we have coming up. And just reach out to me on social media. I'm happy to talk to you and really want to hear your stories. And what I most, really want you to hear is you're not alone in this. There are just under 1 billion of us worldwide. And there is a tremendous shift coming and a tremendous opportunity. If you're an investor, if you're looking for the next big business opportunities, please look in this direction, because I don't want you to miss out on this confluence of trends and the opportunity that they provide.
Love that. So, okay, one last off the wall question as I sip my last drop of coffee here. So
Okay.
I need a good book recommendation from you, and I need a good song recommendation from you, because my existing playlist is getting a little stale. What do you got?
I don't know. I love your playlist. I think it's really good. I play your playlist. Okay, so book. Well, I already said Ashton Applewhite's This Chair Rocks. I think that's a great book. What I'm actually listening to right now, again, a second time, to remind myself to get more grounded, is Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. It's a fabulous, how would I say it, basic book on spirituality and what it really means to let go and to surrender. It's a book on surrender, which is not my forte. And as I expand in my business and myself as a leader, conversely, the bigger I get, the more that I'm opening my arms to receive, the more I need to let go. And so I'm listening to that book to remind me of that. And song, well,
I'm not going to judge you, but we're all going to quietly judge you. I mean, everyone
okay,
judges each
you
other's
can
songs.
quietly judge me. Okay, so I'll say too, I usually pick an anthem for the year that goes with my theme for the year. This year's, which is my morning alarm clock, is actually Work Bitch by Britney Spears.
Yes, yeah, okay. I love that song,
It
actually.
is actually kind of kick ass, gets me out of bed with a clear intention to get after it.
I love that.
Last year's song was This Is Me
Yeah.
from The Greatest Showman, which is a lot about just owning
Yeah.
who you are and the gift that you are to the world. And so both of those motivate me to really show up.
I love
But
that. I'm smiling so big at your song recommendation right now. That's fantastic.
yeah, well, it's not for everyone, but it certainly gets me up in the morning.
Yeah, no, I've been known to listen to that song once or twice when I need a little kick in the pants. So anyway, you're in good company. Jannette, it's been great. I can't wait to see what's next and check in with you later and see how everything is moving forward. So thanks for having coffee with me.
Thank you so much, Franklin, and thank you for being such an advocate for people to be, do, and have what they want in the world. I know it comes from a place of real depth for you in terms of the being as important as the having, which is not the case for all financial, advisors and wealth managers and so forth. That's part of what I really love, is the depth of that.
Thank you, Jannette. And hey, go out there and live well. Yeah.